Well, good morning, everyone. I think most of you know me. My name is Sharma Torrens.
Sorry, Sharma.
No. My name is Sharma Torrens, and I want to thank U of A. I want to thank Tiffany, Dean Burgess, Iman. For the opportunity to speak. I'm really, truly honored to be here. So thank you so much. And one thing I was going to say is so this is probably not going to take 90 minutes, but the whole kind of schedule is one, if they can get a PowerPoint working, it's good to show pictures. If they can't, it's okay, I'll just talk. But I was going to talk about conservation easements and how conservation easements are a tool of conserving agriculture. Oh, you got the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
So yeah, talking about conservation easements and also how that could be it can make access to land more readily available because it's cheaper. So there's a lot of benefits. So it not only keeps a working farming ranch as a farmer ranch and prevents it from being subdivided, but it also makes it cheaper for the next generation to purchase. So that's one. So conservation easements is one. And then two, so then the other thing I'm going to talk about, one, I'm going to talk about the conservation easements, and maybe if they get the PowerPoint going. That's okay. I'm going to talk about conservation easements. Okay, and then we're going to take a quick break and we'll go get some snacks. I know there's some water and other things available. Then what we'll do is we'll take a survey if U of A. Oh, you did get it. We'll take a survey and then we'll come back in, and I'd like to talk about the second thing I'd like to talk about, which is another thing tools to conserve agriculture. And I'll tell you about my different hats, but this is talking about the U.S. Department of Agriculture Climate Smart Grant, which is all about conserving soil health and water conservation. And that's to provide money to people that are doing the good stuff, organic and or regenerative, or that would like to do the good stuff. So those are the two things I want to talk about. We did get it working. Okay, well first, so I'm going to show you some pictures. I don't know if it's better with the lights off, or is it, what do you guys think? Is that better?
All the way if you want.
Ooh, is that too dark? Well, okay, whatever you guys think is good, I'm fine with. So, can you all see me? Yeah. You're good. Okay, so, and one thing I'll say, and Tiffany, thank you. You missed my thank yous to U of A and for the invite and for having me. But one thing is, Tiffany was like, you have 90 minutes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't take 90 minutes. But on the other hand, and some of you know me in this room, know that I'm quite a talker. So like giving me 90 minutes is a little dangerous. But honestly, I don't think we're going to take it all up today. But okay, so this is a great ranch I'm working on. Okay, how do let's see. Where do I do this? Is it this way? I am never savvy with these.
You're not savvy.
I don't even know. Aha! Where do I point it? That way?
You just can click it.
Oh.
But if you do want to point, it doesn't work that well.
Okay, it's not just me, you guys.
But it's just the arrows.
The arrows. Okay. I can barely see them, but it's
Down is the down button is
There we go. Sorry, wrong arrow.
It's okay.
You know, maybe if we could put one light on, because I don't know why
Yeah.
that's. Not that I fall asleep when I'm talking to you, but okay, there we go. Is that better? And maybe did we have the other one on? There was like.
I know, it's like a half dim feature.
It's okay, whatever. Anyways, okay, so this is the conservation easement portion. Yeah, then we're going to take a break, then we're going to do a survey, then I'm going to talk about the USDA Climate Smart Grant that might be of interest to you all. Thank you, because now I can just look this way. And then, so one thing I want to talk about is I always like to talk about me and just tell people a little bit about me. And sorry, Nate, you probably heard this, but
It's always good for a refresher.
Right? So he wants a refresher. Oh my gosh. Okay, and then I'm going to talk about, so CALT is Central Arizona Land Trust. And then you'll understand the different hats I'm wearing once I talk about me, so you'll understand what I'm doing. And then, this will be a good precursor to our meeting. But then I'm going to talk about conservation easements, and I want you all to jump in with any questions you might have, because obviously this is a small, cozy little group, but I also like distractions. So if any of you all have any, questions too, please just go ahead and jump in with them. And then I'm going to give some examples, because again, as I was saying, conservation easements are great tools not only to conserve our working farm and ranch, but also to devalue the land. And when I say that, I'll explain that. Devalue the land so the next generation can purchase it. But please, yeah, keep a little footnote in your mind that I'm explaining that, like exactly what that means, because I know devaluing land doesn't sound like a good thing sometimes, for the landowner especially. Okay, so a little bit about me. So, and is this good for the?
It is. No, yeah, for sure. Thanks.
Okay.
Yes, perfect.
So I'm a native Phoenician, born and raised, and yeah, I still live in Central Phoenix. I know our traffic is so bad and there's a lot of negatives to it, but I'm still here. And I lived away for 10 years, just so y'all know, but I'm back. So I went to Arizona State University, and I don't know if any of y'all, I know I'm in U of A territory for sure, but.
I got a degree there.
Really? Oh, for some reason I didn't know that. Okay, so yeah, I'm ASU, and I was a biology major, and just so you know, I grew up, and this is not all Phoenicians, although I do say this is probably a lot of them, is that I grew up not appreciating agriculture, not understanding the value, didn't know where my food came from, thought farmers and ranchers just destroyed the environment and abused animals. Really, that is really what I thought. You probably gather that I don't think that now, but okay, so I grew up that way. So biology major, so for me it was all about wildlife biology and conserving wildlife habitat, and again had this kind of distorted view, not kind of, a very distorted view about farmers and ranchers and agriculture. So okay, so I went out, worked as a wildlife biologist, and I lived all over. This is one of the chances I lived all over. But then I went to law school after 4 years, and I wanted to be a nonprofit environmental attorney. So I was in San Diego, I went to Thomas Jefferson School of Law, and guess what I would have done? I would have probably joined one of those groups that doesn't appreciate agriculture, right? Because remember where I came from.
Like Western Watersheds type of stuff?
Or the big one in Tucson?
Yeah, and I'm thinking of one, this is probably the one that's jumping into your head too.
Starts
Yeah.
with center.
And I did apply, I'm not kidding you, but see, God had other plans for me, thank the Lord, that this didn't happen, because I actually did 3 nonprofit environmental organization law clerk internships when I was in law school, so I was all set to get where I was going. And again, it wouldn't have been helping agriculture or farmers and ranchers at all. But anyways, I got out of law school, and as luck would have it, there were no jobs in what I wanted. I just couldn't get one. So I actually became a civil litigator in California, Arizona, and DC. And so I was a trial attorney, and I was helping people fight over $1,000. Pay an attorney $5,000 to fight over $1,000. Anyways, it was just ridiculous, because I'm more about how do we all get along. I mean, maybe I should have been a mediator, but anyways, God had other plans. And so I did the civil litigation thing for about 7 years. And I hated it. I despised it. So I said, I'm going back to conservation. I'm giving up practicing law. So I did. So I gave up practicing law, and then I found, this is where I first met, Nate, when I worked with Arizona Land and Water Trust. And so that is a land trust down in Tucson, and they work to conserve agriculture and open space and wildlife habitat. I understood the open space and wildlife habitat, but I honestly didn't understand why you'd conserve agriculture. But I took the job, and I got to know all the farmers and ranchers in Arizona, and specifically in the conservation districts. And see, Nate's in a conservation district, so this is why I'm pointing to Nate. So I got to know the farmers and ranchers in our statewide conservation districts. And then I became educated. Like, aha, I get it. They're the, best conservationists, the original, or the best stewards of the land, the original conservationists. They're doing great things for wildlife, for our environment, for feeding us. I mean, I didn't understand any of that before. And Nate, I don't know if you knew any of that, but anyway, so that was great, because then I became educated. And then, just so you know, growing up, I had the one passion, conserving wildlife habitat, natural resources. And then guess what? I just added my second passion. So I'm so fortunate that I got to know the farmers and ranchers in the conservation districts and got to be educated. And now conserving agriculture is my second passion. So just so y'all know where I come from. I like to tell people kind of where I come from. Okay, so then I was at Arizona Land and Water Trust for about 4 years, and then Director Killian, our former director of the Arizona Department of Agriculture, came and offered me a job as the Ledge Liaison Public Information Officer. And I didn't even know him, but I had to, like, that's an opportunity. You can't turn that down. So obviously someone that worked with him knew me, and that's probably, they said, you gotta hire her. Anyway, so I went to work for Director Killian, and he's wonderful. And I worked with the governor's office, great experience, loved it. Got to know even more about agriculture, right? Okay, so I did that for a few years, but then, see, this is kind of how luck happens. So I think it was about 6 years ago, the conservation districts, so the Arizona Association of Conservation Districts, which is the nonprofit that supports and promotes our 42 conservation districts in the state, came and offered me a job, but they said, we don't want to hire you as an employee, we want you to be a consultant, so open your own business. So never thought of it before, never considered it, but it just seemed too fortuitous and too kismet, maybe kismet's the better word, that the folks that educated me and made me become an ag trust came to me and said, will you start working for us? So then I took that job too. And that's on conservation easements, and this is what we're gonna be talking to today. That's the hat I'm gonna be wearing when I talk about that. And then the third hat, believe it or not, this just happened in January. It's like I'm not busy enough. I have too much free time or something. So White Tank Mountains Conservancy came and offered me their executive director position. And so now I'm doing that too. And that one is all about, the White Tank Mountains are in the West Valley. I don't know if any of you live in the West Valley. You do. Oh, wait, I think I knew that. Anyone else in the West Valley? No. So yeah, the White Tank Mountains are out in Buckeye and Surprise, and there's already 2 parks out there, a Buckeye-owned park, City of Buckeye-owned park, and a county park that can serve the White Tank Mountains. And there's a lot of recreation, 550,000 recreators go out there every year, so very popular. But the White Tank Mountain Conservancy is all about conserving a regional corridor around the White Tank Mountains, and the area, especially west of the White Tank Mountains to the Belmont Mountains up to the Vultures, it's about 13 miles, is a very important regional wildlife corridor. We work with the Game and Fish Department. And it's not developed. So the West Valley, that's the great thing about the West Valley. It's not like Phoenix, it's not all developed. And so there's an opportunity to really keep that corridor open. It's really about promoting sustainable development. So you probably can gather that's kind of going back to kind of my first passion. And you can see that I'm really kind of about sustainable development. And believe you me, I was pretty bummed when I heard there were no farmers or ranchers out in the West Valley that I could work with. There aren't. It's all developers and municipalities and other agencies and folks. But anyway, so that's kind of how I got to my 2 passions. And so in this hat, yeah, I'm going to be talking on behalf of Central Arizona Land Trust and the conservation easement. Okay, I think I got the clicker now. Okay. Well, and feel free to jump in, because again, I like distractions, so any questions or anything. Okay, so Central Arizona Land Trust is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, okay? They have a mission to preserve and protect open space, wildlife habitat, working farms and ranch, and protect the scenic and cultural values. And they generally work in central and northern Arizona, and I say generally because they don't have to. So, like some of you farmers and ranchers down south, I know there's some land trusts already doing good stuff down there, but if there's something we can do to help, we would. But anyway, so this is the one that came to me a few years ago and offered me the job to work for another land trust. So it's really, and I'll show you how it's about conserving agriculture. But again, with the agriculture, and you all knew this, I didn't get this when I was growing up, is that when you conserve a farm or ranch, it's also open space, wildlife habitat, protecting erosion of the soil, all the good stuff, and the livelihoods, jobs, everything that comes along with it. Okay, so conservation easements. Okay, so this is one of the first tools I want to talk about for conserving agriculture. So conservation easements, and I'm kind of doing a brief overview because these are really complex transactions. And some of you in this room probably know about that. But So these are voluntary contracts between the landowner and a land trust. And I'll explain why a land trust, because I think, you're gonna wonder, why do you need a land trust? Because when I talk about funders and things, you're gonna have that question, I'm sure. But so conservation easements are governed by so the Arizona Revised Statute, and I have it listed, 33-271. If you want to be bored to tears, go read that statute. But that's the statute in Arizona law. It's also governed by a deed of conservation easement, which is the governing contract to a conservation easement. And these are recorded in the county it's located. So if you ever want to go read a deed of conservation easement, I don't know if you can go to all 15 counties, but you can probably go to at least maybe half of them, and you'll find a conservation easement and a deed of conservation easement recorded. Okay, so basically conservation easements when a landowner sells or donates their development rights. And it's not all development rights, so people always have this wrong. You're not saying I'm never going to develop on my property. You're saying I'm not going to subdivide my property. That's the difference. If you want to build a farmhouse, a residence, whatever, you negotiate that in the deed of conservation easement. And in land trusts, if they're good land trusts like us, and actually we have a lot of good land trusts in our state, they will come to the landowner and say, what do you want to do? What do you foresee? Because we want you to be able to put that in the deed of conservation easement. Okay? So you can't subdivide it, but you can still develop. You can still develop, okay? The purpose. So I know I'm going to say conserve twice. I don't like the word preserve. And some of you probably know why. But so it's conserving the conservation values. That's the purpose of a conservation easement. What are the conservation values? So if you go look at the Arizona Revised Statute, that lists them out for Arizona, but it goes beyond that too. And it talks about farmland. It doesn't talk about ranch land or range land in the statute. But basically that's what it is. So a farm and ranch, a working farm and ranch, that's a conservation value. Wildlife habitat, open space, water, trees, all this good stuff. There's a lot of things that can be conservation values. So the conservation easement, that's its purpose. And again, remember, a conservation value is a working farm and ranch, right? So you can see how these are used for that. Okay, so remember I said it's when a landowner sells or donates their development rights. And I shouldn't even say development rights because then you'll think you can't develop, but subdivision rights. How about that? Subdivision rights. Okay? So when you sell it, and most people sell it because I know that we don't have a lot of we don't have incredibly wealthy Ted Turners and, flooding our state and everybody has a ton of money just laying around. So farmers and ranchers, they usually sell those development rights, and we want them to do that because we want them to get paid, and it helps sustain the agriculture. Because remember the whole purpose of all this, right? So the funders are usually the federal or state agencies. So if we're talking like NRCS, I know NRCS is here. So NRCS is a big funder of farms and ranches. What do they want to do? They want to keep them going. Bureau of Land Management, Fish and Wildlife Service, Forest Service. There's a lot of different federal agencies. There's also state. The Arizona Game and Fish Department has had money for conservation easement. The Arizona Department of Transportation at one time had scenic highway funds. It could be states. It could also be municipalities. The city of Phoenix had farmland preservation program funds a couple of years ago, which Central Arizona Land Trust worked on. And I think I'll be talking a little bit about that because that's one of the examples. Okay. So the funders, generally federal or state agencies. And then the amount that the landowner receives is based on a qualified appraised value. So we have an appraiser go in and value the full sale market value of that land. Okay, full sale market value, so you know exactly what a developer would pay for, or, if they go by the appraisal value. And then they value the development rights, the subdivision rights, the conservation easement value, okay? So that's how it's reached. So the amount that the landowner receives for money is based on the qualified appraisal. The amount that they receive for a donation, and I'll talk about that a little bit, same thing, based on this qualified appraised value. Okay. This is something I need to emphasize quite a bit because a lot of folks don't understand this, is that the landowner still owns the land. right? You own the land. You're not giving up title to your land. You're just basically giving up one of your property rights sticks, the right to subdivide. You're giving that up. In perpetuity, mind you. And I will say that our statute doesn't require perpetual, and one of the funders here used to pay for non-perpetual conservation easements, but I don't know of any funders that do right now. So most of the funders want perpetual, and so that's kind of what they are right now, until we find a funder that can do non-perpetual. Okay, any questions so far? Yes?
Have you had issues with these farmers and whoever owns these properties, like not trusting the whole concept of it?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You
I
want to
got
say
lots of
anything?
neighbors that way.
Yeah.
You got lots of neighbors that way?
I could just see it for sure. Because anytime it gets kind of sticky when you get into conservation and ranching, especially here with so much history of like jaguars, this and that, and that
Oh my
watersheds
gosh.
and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not so much the animals, it's what do we do with the ranch when we pass on? You know,
Yeah.
how do our kids take it?
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Nate's right. But yes, there's been a lot of mistrust or
Mhm.
distrust. I always confuse the two of them, but yeah, no trust at all.
Mhm.
When I started 12 years ago with Arizona Land and Water Trust, and Cochise County was my first kind of target area,
Oh yeah.
because I knew I had to win the Cochise County folks. And I said all the wrong things.
Mm.
And I worked with the conservation district down there, that's how, yeah. I probably said all the wrong things, but then I figured out real quick what not to say and how to do this. So I'm very careful about how I say things when I'm talking to farmers and ranchers. Especially ones that I know might be a little, you know, not too trusting, I guess I will say. And so it's taken me, and that's one thing, that's why I like to tell my story a little bit, because I like to remind people where I come
The
from.
process.
Yeah, when they remember, so they all knew me from the get-go, and the conservation district farmers and ranchers especially, and they knew I came from the other side. And so I tell them that, and hopefully they trust me now because I work for them, so. But yeah, it took many, many years, and just so you know, so I used to have a lot of educational workshops, and a lot of them were in Cochise County with one of the conservation districts down there, and yeah, we had some rough goings in the beginning, because again, I didn't know what not to say, and I was green, and you know, whatever. I mean, green, wet behind the ears, you know, new, that's what I'm trying to say, new. But then, yeah, I think it was about 6 months ago, we went down there again, in my new role with Central Arizona Land Trust. I used to be with Arizona Land and Water Trust. And we had a workshop, and I was very pleased, because I think that the times are changing. There's not, I mean, yes, there are some that still don't trust, and I know who they are, and I talk to them all the time, and I respect them, and they respect me, but I think the tides are changing. So I think they're starting to understand what they do.
Well, it helps
I don't know
when
if you,
people see how they're working, or, you know, big names have put in conservation easements and stuff. So it takes the stigma away from it.
that's true, that's true.
That's
But
true.
you know, the other thing I tell the folks, because I know there's two key folks and they pop in my head every time, because I know they don't like conservation easements, and that's fine. But I just say, then don't do it. Don't do it, right? It's voluntary, so don't do it. And that's pretty much what I say. And so, but we still, yeah, we get a lot of interest. So I think the tides are changing and people are starting to understand this is a tool to conserve agriculture, it really is. And you have to work with a land trust that you trust, no pun intended. But so that's really big, is yeah, just ensuring you have the trust and, you know, the relationship established. Okay. So the qualified appraisal determines the sale or donation price for a conservation easement, okay? And the appraisal, I always like to say this. So when I used to work on conservation easements, even 12 years ago, even 7 years ago, I used to say it was 40 to 60% of the full sale value. 40 to 60%. Now, it's crazy. It's 60 to 90%. I have seen several in the last 2 years that have been 90% of the full sale value. Mind you, those are properties where they won't build anything, nothing, because it's part of the ranch they don't want to develop, or you know, even put a barn on or anything. That's how that gets to be the 90%. But I mean, I have just been floored at how what the percentage is, that's high. And so, and I'll explain kind of how this works throughout. But so, everything okay?
Yeah, everything's
Okay. Okay, so perpetual conservation easements are binding on anyone that owns the property. So your heirs, anyone that buys it. Because remember that deed of conservation easement is recorded in the county it's located? So when they purchase that property, that is gonna be with the property, it runs with the property. So that's how that happens. I'll explain how this can help the next generation though. Remember I said it devalues the land? Well, one, think about that, and we'll go over some numbers, but if you devalue the land by 90%, holy moly! You know, in theory, and I say in theory because it depends on market value when they go to sell and all that. But in theory, it's really only worth 10%. So if someone wants to go buy it, which would only be a farmer or rancher because the developer's not gonna want it, right? It's gonna be, you know, far cheaper than it was, if you're selling it.
It's gonna really depend where it's at.
Yes,
'Cause like in our area, our irrigated land is worth more than the developed. So, especially with the new AMA.
yeah, oh yeah.
So,
In Cochise County, right? Yeah.
in our area of Cochise County, now if you get western Cochise County, Sierra Vista, yeah, it's the other way around.
Oh, really?
In our area, in Sulphur Springs Valley, I would say our irrigated land is worth more than development. Well, price in point, we bought some land across the street and paid 10% of what ours was worth. And, you know, it's just rangeland.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Interesting. Well, and then if you want to later, I don't know if you want to come up and share anything about, your experiences with.
Sure, the long drawn out process.
Well, and see, so just so y'all know, I worked, it sounds like you've already revealed it, Nate, but yeah, I worked with Nate on a conservation easement a few years back, and he can tell you it was a little brutal.
Well, it was just a learning curve for everybody, especially in RCS.
NRCS, that was the funder.
Yeah, I'll speak whenever you want me to.
Okay, well, great. When we'll come back, and then y'all know. I didn't want to reveal it, but Nate, let the cat out of the bag, so you can see where I know Nate, but and Jackie. Okay, but so it's binding on anyone that purchases the property. So again, if you sell it, it's reduced by the value. And I say in theory because again, remember the market might change. It might be more than 10%. It might be less. Who knows? The market is doing some crazy stuff right now. So remember 60 to 90%? I can't even tell you. I have a ranch up in Williamson Valley that's going for like $37 million, 5,600 acre ranch. And so, the value of conservation easements is going crazy. I can't even predict it when I apply to a funder because by the time it gets approved, it's gone up. It's a crazy market right now. But anyway, okay. So the deed of conservation easement, remember that's one of the things that governs, and it's recorded in the county it's located. It's a really complex contract, but it's where you put in all the language. And so the land trust, hopefully again you have that trust with the land trust, and they'll come to you and say, what do you want to do? What do you foresee? Let's put the language in. You can amend it. You can amend it. So I'm not saying that's impossible. It's just difficult. Because you have to get the funder together, because the funder does have some say in the language. You remember that. The funder does have some say. You got to get the land trust and the landowner, and so it can be done. It's just it takes time. So I try to tell people to figure it out. And then the terms are negotiable. And again, that's what the land trust is there for. And I'll just quickly go over some land trust, what the land trust is for, and then we'll get into some examples. Okay. So the land trust. So basically, remember the funders are federal or state agencies, and mostly we deal with funders. We don't deal with a lot of donations because how many people can afford to donate their development rights, right? We don't see it too often. It does happen, but so the land trust goes and finds the funder because the funders, you can probably imagine the agencies don't want to do this work. No. And so that's why they rely upon land trust. That's why you need a land trust. So land trust goes and finds the funding, they apply for the funding, they negotiate the deed with the conservation easement, they act as the intermediary between the landowner and the funder, and then they're the holder of the conservation easement. So basically, you still own the land. We don't own the land. The land trust is the holder, which means that they come in annually with your permission to monitor the property, to make sure it's not being subdivided. So basically, right, come to the same spots every year and just make sure it's not being subdivided. That's it, and take pictures. I'm not with Arizona Land and Water Trust anymore, but I'm
That's
sure,
what they
yeah,
do.
that's what they do, I'm sure. So that's what the land trust does, see? So you can kind of see why a land trust is necessary, because you can contact NRCS and they're gonna send you to a land trust. And so, yeah, so it's good. I think it's more good than bad, because we're the getter done. And yeah, sometimes it's drawn out, and Nate will tell you some stories. Sometimes the funder has to go through their bureaucracies and they try to draw it out, but we're the ones that just push them and push them and push them, because we don't have the same bureaucracies that we have to abide by, and we want to see it get done. We want the landowner to get paid. We want you to help sustain your agriculture, do what you need to do with that money. And then it stays a working farm and ranch, remember, in perpetuity, so it stays a working farm or ranch. So then some people say, well, what if we can't farm or ranch it, you know? Well, if acts of God or things happen that are unforeseeable, and you can't, then you can't. No one's gonna force you to do anything, and if you can't do it, you can't do it. So, I get that question a lot, so I tell people. But, so yeah, so the land trust is pretty important in this process. Okay, I'm just gonna go over a couple of the benefits and then we're gonna give some examples and we'll take a break. How are we doing on time?
You're doing great.
What time is it? Is it?
It is now.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Wow, I'm using up more time than I thought. Okay, all right, financial benefits, right? Okay, remember, so most people sell it. So 60 to 80%, and sometimes I throw out 60 to 80, but remember I said 60 to 90. So if you're not putting anything on there, it's completely blank, property that won't be developed. That's more like 90. Okay. So you're paid the money. So I'm going to give an example. So let's say it's $1 million property. So 60 to 80% of the full sale. So remember the $1 million is full sale fair market value of an appraisal, full sale value of that land. 60 to 80%, $600,000 to $800,000 you get for selling your subdivision right, for selling for putting the conservation easement on your land. So $1 million property, if it's 60 to 80%, and again, it could be higher, maybe lower if you're developing a lot, but $600,000 to $800,000. Okay, why do people donate? Again, I don't see this too much because most people would prefer the money so they can help sustain their agriculture. But some donate it and they do it for a federal tax deduction. And there is an Internal Revenue Code 170H. It's the federal tax incentive, and it works with producers. And I don't know if y'all were able to take advantage of it, but
We did something, I can't remember.
you did something. Okay. So when I say donate, because NRCS, for instance, and most funders, I might add, require that, like, they'll pay 75% of the conservation easement value, and they require a landowner or a land trust, and it's usually the landowner, to contribute the other 25%. So you're not paid 25% of that conservation easement value. And so the hope is that you're getting a federal tax deduction out of that, okay? And how that tax deduction works is basically producers can deduct 100% of their income from the conservation easement the first year, and up to 15 years, 50% from. So for a lot of, but this is what land trusts say, this is what we say for sure. Because our attorney, you probably remember I'm an attorney, but I'm not practicing. So we have our own attorney, and he'd kill me if I said it any other way. But we always tell the landowner, you have to contact a tax attorney or a CPA to see if you're eligible. We cannot tell you if you're eligible, but that's the hope. Okay? So yeah, so think about if you got 600,000, let's say it's 60%, and then 100,000 per year, so 100%, and then 50,000 for each year out for 15 years, up to 15 years. And so there is there's benefit for donating, right? And how you do that is, so remember, this is another good role for the land trust, is that they are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so you are donating because you're seen as donating to the land trust, right? So that's how it all works. But yeah, I don't see that a lot. Does that make sense, or is that clear as mud? Yeah, okay. All right, so, and then there's of course other benefits, protecting your legacy. We want to know, I don't know, we need to educate them. But yeah, helps sustain the agricultural operations, because that's what we want you to do. Keep that farm and ranch going. We want that food supply, the economic contributor, the jobs. What was U of A's, is it still the $23.3 billion for agriculture? I think that was a
I'm not totally sure, to be
2014
honest.
estimate.
Skill, do you know?
Yeah, anyways, I was thinking about that when Dean Burgess was speaking. But yeah, it's also, again, you know, go back to how I started, conserving wildlife habitat and open space and, you know, things like that. Okay, so, yeah, so remember, it reduces the value. So if you go to, let's say you get 90% of the full sale value, let's say it's that $1 million property and you get 90% of the full sale value for the conservation easement. So you get $900,000. And then in theory, again, remember market, it's worth about 10,000 bucks, or sorry, my math is poor, isn't it? It's 10% of that 1 million, so what is that, 100,000? Gosh, that's simple math, you think I should be able to do that. Okay, but remember it's perpetual and binding on anyone that owns it. But yeah, it makes it really affordable, so that's how so one, we're helping conserve agriculture. I do have to mention one thing, because I heard Dean Burgess and Ed mention this, but and Iman even mentioned, you know, we're getting 10 million people in this area. And so where do you think they're going to go for the housing? They're going to go to, they see farms and ranches as useless. And I know it's a tragedy, and it's one of my passions to educate them otherwise, but they're going to try to subdivide our farms and ranches. That's what they're going to go for. And to be quite honest, the developers are, you know, they're offering handsomely. So it's hard, you know, I'm not going to blame a farmer or rancher for turning that down. But we'd like to, you know, keep that going.
Yeah, it is quite unfortunate, and I used to work at Saguaro National Park, and so we have so much historic farms around us, and even in the park they were ranching cattle, and that did contribute to like the saguaro mortalities and whatnot. But outside of that, there was a historic ranch called X9 Ranch, and it's this huge ranch, and the owner died, obviously, like the story you always hear, and it got passed down almost like to his children, and they sold off like a huge chunk of land, and now thankfully it's not being subdivided, but it is developed, and there's houses there, like private property, large private property, and no one's ranching or anything there anymore. It's just kind of like more like a low-key, like kind of rich upper class area. And then just across the street is Rocking K Ranch. Not across the street, but across the area. And that is devastating, because it used to be a big ranch that was bordering the park, and now it's a giant housing development. Like, it's like immense. Like, you have to drive. They have their own school because it's just huge. And it used to be like, just, you know, a couple years ago, it was just all desert land.
Isn't that disgusting?
Yeah, so it got sold off, and now there's like multiple development agencies that are building houses in that area, like in that one, you know, big chunk of land.
And you know what's, I think this is a flaw, maybe it's human nature or whatever. We just don't think long term. We need to like think. You know, we're just, ooh, let's get money and let's build a house, and you know, we just don't think, oh my gosh, where are we going to get our food from, or what are we doing to the soil, or where are the wildlife going to go, or, I'm sorry to hear that. Oh gosh,
yeah,
if I drive down there, I'm going to be just devastated when I see
you'll
this
see it
happen.
for sure. It's like such an eyesore.
Just go out Old Spanish Trail.
Yep, exactly.
Is that it?
That's where it is, yeah. Yep. It's
That's awful. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Okay, so I don't know if you guys want to take a break, or you want to go over these examples, or what do you guys feel like? Does anyone need to take a break? I'd like to get some water. Does anyone want to get snacks or water or anything?
I'll go for a break.
Okay, well, maybe we'll take a quick break. I'll do some quick examples and then I'll talk about the grant. Is it already 10:45 or 10:40?
45.
Holy moly, okay, then maybe we'll take a quick 10-minute break and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the grant and then you guys can let me know if you have any questions and I don't even know if we need to do the survey. It's just a cozy group and you guys feel free to ask questions, right? So, okay, all right, so 10:55.
10:55.
Yeah, please come back, we got a cozy little group. Just a few more examples, and again, feel free to chime in with questions, and we're gonna have Nate Watkins talk. You probably gathered from this whole conversation, yeah, he has a conservation easement on his farm, and we'll hear from him the good and the bad, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? About conservation easements. So, and yeah, I was the one that worked on that, and it was a little brutal, but in some sense. But again, it's done. It's fantastic farm, and yeah, it's great things. Okay, so this is examples, just so you know how land trusts work, how this whole kind of process. Just really get this in your brain. Okay, so this Williamson Valley Ranch. So I'm working up on the Williamson Valley Ranch near Prescott. It's over 5,000 acres. It's about 5,600. So they came to Central Arizona Land Trust. Remember, you need the land trust. And they said, we want to sell our development rights on this thing. So they wanted to sell their subdivision rights, put a conservation easement on. So we went and found a funder. So we had to do, so it's a lot of work, as you can imagine, but we had to go, one, you have to know who's funding and where, and how much they have, and when to apply, and how to apply, and you really just, so we went to NRCS, so it's another NRCS one, and Nate will tell you about his experience, but, so it's their Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, which is new, and that's not what Nate's gonna tell you. I think that was the Farmland Preservation Program that they used to call it, but anyways, so this is an actual picture of the ranch, and so it's a pronghorn habitat. The Game and Fish Department determines it's an important connectivity zone for a lot of the wildlife. It's been a working ranch for over 100 years. So since statehood, you know, there's a lot of history and archaeological artifacts on there. It's grasslands of special significance, which is another thing, and I think that was new after we did the Nate's easement, but NRCS has this thing where they'll only pay 50% of the conservation easement value, which is ridiculous. Did I just say that?
I don't know.
It's, yeah, so what we do is, yeah, because then you're expecting the landowner to donate 50%, so not receive 50% of that conservation easement value. So remember the whole $1 million if you got 800,000, 80%, so you would only get 400,000. We don't like that, so we work with landowners to push this grasslands of special environmental significance where they pay 75%, which is a little more reasonable, because 25%, that's usually okay for landowners. But anyway, so that's one ranch, and just so you know, yeah, it was approved, it was awarded funding, and I'm actually about to close in the next week. But just so you know, it's a complex transaction, so again, this is where the land trust comes involved. So there's due diligence. So when I say due diligence, that means the appraisal. We have to have a survey. We have to have a phase 1 environmental site assessment just to see if there's hazardous things on the property. And we have a mineral assessment. And then we work with a title company. So it's almost like purchasing a property. I mean, it's a really complex thing. But again, we don't own the property. The landowner still owns it. We just become the holder of these conservation easement. Of the conservation easement. Okay, so yeah, called, negotiated the language for the deed of conservation easement. NRCS had some say in the language, and Nate can tell you about that if you have any questions. But yeah, basically, we got all the survey, appraisal, mineral assessment, phase 1 environmental site assessment done, and now I'm working with the title company to get it all closed. So, I mean, it's really, I even sold my property recently, and I think a conservation easement's more complex, but Nate can tell you that. I mean, there's a lot of documentation that goes along with it. Okay, so then, yeah, the property, so we actually, just so you know, on this property, so there are no buildings, and it was only one section, because we can't afford, I don't know if you heard me earlier say how much the value of this one is. high. So we could only afford one section at 5,600 with NRCS funds, but 90%, so 90%. So I'm just gonna throw out a figure, and this isn't, I'm not gonna release the full value, but so, and gosh, and this is gonna really show how I can't do math. I'm gonna skip that, because then you're really gonna see how I can't do math, but it's 90%. So basically, they're still gonna own the land, they're still gonna ranch it, still do what they need to do. They're not gonna build on it because they didn't really care about that section. They were gonna keep that one entirely open. Stays a working ranch, open space, wildlife habitat, game and fish department has its way, it's a connectivity zone. There's a lot of good things that come with that. And so that one's closing soon. And this is the one we worked, so remember City of Phoenix had Farmland Preservation Program funds? These came out of the American Rescue Plan Act funds. They were only temporary, so the City of Phoenix is looking for more permanent funds, and so these actually went away. But we were able, Central Arizona Land Trust was able to conserve Maya's farm. So you probably know Maya's farm in South Phoenix. So it's a really wonderful 3.3 acre farm, funded by the City of Phoenix Farmland Preservation Program funds. I'll just mention real quick, I know you're recording, they were a wonderful funder because they were very, they were very hands-off, and they just said, you guys are the experts, and we'd say, do you want to look at the deed of conservation easement? They said, you're the experts, and it was, so we were able to close on that one date, you're gonna hate to hear this. In 4 months, we were able to close on that property. 4 months, but that doesn't always happen. And I understand, if any funders are watching this, they have bureaucracies they have to follow, so we have to say that. But anyway, so that deed of conservation easement is recorded in the Maricopa County Recorder's Office if you ever want to go look at it. It's a template. Okay, so we closed. It was about 75% of the full sale value. And now Maya, as you probably know, so Maya is renting the land. She didn't own the land. And so now there's an opportunity for her to go purchase the land much cheaper and know it's going to stay a working farm. So it's really cool. So conservation easements are, I'm just going to put my contact information up here, but conservation easements are a great tool to conserve agriculture. Because remember, stays a working farm or ranch, y'all get paid money, which helps you sustain your agriculture, or you, what do I keep hitting? Or if you donate it and you get that federal tax deduction, that's great too. There's just a lot of benefits. It reduces the value so the next generation can afford it. It keeps our local food supply. I don't know what I'm hitting. I'm probably hitting something that keeps beeping.
It might be
I
your
think it's the
routines,
laptop.
actually.
Yeah, I think it's the laptop.
Yeah, it sounds like
I
it's a
know.
notification.
Just hit.
Okay. Anyways, okay. So do y'all have any questions? Because if not, we'll have Nate come up and
So I know that you work, or you said you work in northern Arizona as well.
Yes.
And so when it comes to the Mexican gray wolves up there, I know that they fall within that area, like eastern Arizona. Do you guys, when it comes to these easements, do you guys work with the wolves but also the ranchers to have this balance, or does the conservation easement completely stay separate from the wolf and the agreements with Fish and Wildlife
That's a great
and
question.
with all these people that are trying to
Yeah.
have the wolves in the range, but also respect the farmers and ranchers that obviously sometimes lose cattle
Yeah.
or even lose access to certain areas, things like that.
Yeah. No.
Wild horses too.
Oh yeah, wild
yes.
horses.
Oh gosh,
Yeah,
I gotta tell you
yeah,
how I used to
yeah.
work on those.
Yeah.
With the Department of Agriculture. Anyways, no, that's a great question. Yeah, so the conservation easement, we stay out of that
Oh,
stuff.
I had a
Yeah,
feeling,
we stay out of that, and I don't even think Central Arizona Land Trust has a conservation easement that in the area with
Mhm.
the Mexican wolves. I'm
It's
trying
kind
to
of,
think.
it's not too huge. It's like
Wouldn't
Hardee's.
Have they
Would
moved
it
into?
depend with the funder?
Well, okay, yeah. So that's a good point. So Nate said it depends on the funder. So that's a good point. And I'm thinking NRCS when I'm talking to you, but you're right. If it's Fish and Wildlife Service, they might want something in there. But I gotta tell you, I don't know that we have a lot of ranchers on our board. One of them is my former boss, Director Killian, and and I don't think they'd appreciate you know, if we go in, because we want to steer clear of trying to manage land, we don't manage land.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know that we pursue any funding with the Fish and Wildlife Service if they required us to try to manage, because we'd be like, no,
Oh,
we're
I see.
not touching that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Because-
can see the rancher walking away from that.
Oh,
Right?
yeah,
Who would do that?
Yeah.
But having said that, it's funny, I think of the conservation district up in Apache County, I don't think they, you know, the Apache County, Derrick, and I don't think they wouldn't do that either, but, because they're working with the wolves and they're actually working really collaboratively.
They are, yeah. But
Up there.
I even know like in White Valley and Apache, like there's people who still, like, you know, tribal members who aren't really for the wolves, but then there are people who are. So that's why I asked, because there's this weird, like, there's people who support it, there's people who don't, and so I was just seeing if you guys play a role.
Yeah, no, and it's funny too, the waters, people ask us about water, yeah, we don't touch that.
Oh, interesting.
Because we're just there to help conserve a farm and ranch. Like in our conservation easement, Nate, you could talk about it. We usually say don't use more water than you're using. Don't put land into farming that you're already, you know, that you're not already doing, unless we negotiate it in. But we don't touch that because yeah, we're just there to conserve that farm and ranch, and so.
Interesting.
So yeah, I don't know that we'd pursue Fish and Wildlife Service, but that's a good point, because I bet you anything, they'd have something in there. And I didn't work on that one in your area that was Fish and Wildlife Service funding, so I don't know what that was like. But yeah, if funder tries to push something on our landowners, either we push back or the landowner wouldn't do it, or, you know,
Totally.
so.
Thanks.
So I like that, because you're getting back to knowing who I am. You probably get I'm really moderate, and I like staying in the middle and like skirting both sides, and I like that a lot because I'm just doing good work, but I'm not getting involved in some controversial issues.
Totally. Yep.
Although my family are all vegans, and I'm kind of the black sheep. They don't understand the value of agriculture, and they probably say that maybe I'm doing something a little. Anyways.
Yeah.
But any other questions? Because then we might have, Nate, if you want to take a few minutes to talk about your experiences. I don't know if you want to come up or sit down or whatever you
Well,
feel
whatever,
comfortable.
these three want. Well, we met Sharma, I think it was 2010, that we heard about conservation easements as a farm. And it's got some rangeland around it, but it's mostly a farm. We're down in Cochise County, about 20 miles north of the border. We're 25 miles east of Tombstone. So, to give you an idea. And we had our farm, that area had an INA, irrigation non-expansion area. So we knew that our water rights that we were assigned gave us extra value. But we weren't using all the irrigation rights at that time. So when we were building this conservation easement, we made sure that we kept all our water rights, so we could expand into other areas. I'm getting ahead of myself. When we did that, we approached Arizona Land and Water Trust, and Sharma said, "Oh, NRCS is doing conservation easements. Okay, let's pursue that." Well, again, as I mentioned, it took 3 years.
3 years.
From start to closing. But part of it was Arizona NRCS had no clue how to do this. They brought some gal from Oregon in.
Oh yes, she was the
Yeah.
closer.
And she got it done. But negotiation with NRCS was tense at times. You know, they would give us something, my wife would go through it, no.
Yeah.
And they'd give something back to them. It was just a give and take. We were able to keep building envelopes on the corners of our property, basically, to where, okay, we want to, in the future, we want to build this, or we might want this, or whatever. And these were parts that weren't going to ever be irrigated anyways. So that's why we did that. And there was only one thing we forgot to tell them, that we were building a hay barn. So they showed up.
Whoops.
Where did this come from? It's in the building envelope. Well, you should tell us. Okay. And, you know, Cameron was really cool about it.
Was
so
he?
it was just-
Okay, I hired Cameron. Yeah.
Let's see what else. We've encouraged other people to pursue conservation easements. You know, I don't know if they have or not. And one another source of funding that has developed in the last couple of years in Cochise County is the Sentinel landscape, which is the area that around Fort Huachuca to protect their airspace and all that. And they've extended it all the way to the New Mexico border, so it took in where we're at. So, I don't know, have you ever worked with Sentinel?
I still Amber,
Yeah,
I work
she's still there.
Amber, yeah.
You know, we haven't pursued it. We own more property. We thought, well, maybe we'll put these in or not, so we're not sure on that.
Yeah.
What else can I say? I mean, even though it took a long time, it was basically not a big headache. And we knew going in that it was gonna take a while. And even if we went in today, we know it wouldn't happen in 4 months.
No, that is very unusual.
Yeah, I mean, 2 to 3 years would probably be reasonable. Just because there's so many things they gotta go in with. And like I said earlier, the appraisal value could be upside down in our area right now because irrigated property is worth more than
Then,
development.
Wow.
oh yeah, I think I know the values, I think I heard,
Yeah.
wow, I was
This
shocked.
is crazy. I mean, well, we've had a lot of people from California and stuff come in and buy irrigation and put in pecan orchards and buy pecan orchards and this and that. They really inflated the value. And we have a huge dairy that has just bought out pretty much every farmer around.
Oh.
So they really increase the value.
Mm.
But yeah, it's not the same area that I knew 10 years ago. You know, we don't have the neighboring farms, it's all big corporate farm or whatever. We're still independent, and we're gonna stay. I'm not sure what else I can say.
How do your kids feel about the perpetual,
Well,
yeah,
you know, our kids are still finding their own way.
Mm-hmm.
We have one kid who is in our area, he's bought his own little farm. And maybe he'll come around, he's more rancher than farmer. But maybe he'll come around when it's time for us to let somebody else have it and take over. But the other 3 kids, we don't know. We did have a sit-down meeting with them a couple of years ago and say, okay, we're developing our trust and everything, and we want to know, you know, this is how we want to split everything up. How do you guys feel about it? And we went back and forth on that, and we all came to an agreement, but, you know, things change over time. So we're back to where, okay, we need to maybe figure out something else out. And another thing is, okay, there are people who would lease our farm in a heartbeat. And so that's always an option for our kids. Okay, you guys retain ownership
yeah.
and lease it out.
Lease it out.
And that's my retirement plan. I'm gonna, in a few years, I'm gonna lease it out. I already know who I'm gonna lease it to.
Do you?
Oh yeah, he's been my angel this year.
Oh.
I've had some medical issues.
Oh, I'm
But
sorry.
anyways, he took over a lot of stuff for me until I got back on my feet. And, yeah, I trust him implicitly. And he's good friends with 2 of my kids, so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
point.
that's great.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, and it just takes conversation.
Mhm.
You know, and just, okay, kids, we know you've got this and this and this going on in your life. What do you want to do later? And, do you want to come back and take the farm over or whatever? Yeah,
Yeah.
and we did the same thing with my wife's family. Both my wife and I basically left for 10 years and then came back. And you know, my wife's family split up their ranch between her sister and 2 brothers in 4 pieces. And we each got our piece. So, yeah, we were all, it just takes communication.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and they were great landowners to work with, because they were
Oh,
very
thanks.
patient.
Wow.
I was like, "Roar."
Jackie more patient than me. I
Oh,
just said,
God.
okay, you deal with
You
it.
guys are both great, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
But he did-
any-
yeah,
any
sorry, go on.
questions?
Yeah, this is kind of
Sure.
a more random, but what do you guys grow over there?
Oh, we have alfalfa, that's our main crop.
Alfalfa.
And I do small grains in the winter, like your triticale or whatever.
Oh.
And we just put in 40 acres of trees
Ooh.
5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Citrus, what kind of trees?
Pecan.
Pecans.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and that was, we did make sure that they knew we were, you know, Arizona Land Water Trust knew we were putting in pecans. And they just,
You
okay.
gotta hear about this grant we're doing.
Okay. And yeah, they're starting to come into production.
Mhm.
It takes pecans a while.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
used to have a meat business. We raised sheep, pigs,
Oh, wow.
beef, we still have some beef.
Mhm.
And we had a meat business that we sold meats at the farmer's market. Well, this year we decided to stop that.
Oh, wow, okay, yeah.
Mainly we lost our main processor, the U of A.
Oh, I heard about that.
Yeah, I
Supposedly
heard
they're
that.
gonna reopen it.
Yeah, I heard.
December.
In January.
Yeah.
We'll
Is
see.
Is that it, January?
I
So they
heard
go
that-
corner Burgess?
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
it's still here?
The sheep are just running around freely.
Now, my wife came to me this year and said, what do you think if I sold the sheep? And I didn't tell them my initial reaction. I'm like, none, that is your decision. And my back of my mind, I was like, yes.
Yes. Yeah, you were for it.
So,
Oh, sorry about that.
but yeah, I mean, we have 2 dogs on our place. That's all.
Wow.
The horses are over at my son's.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. So we're kind of enjoying no animals.
Yeah.
Good.
Interesting. Wow.
But yeah, I mean, it's a great lifestyle. Not every family does it generationally. My wife's family is a 6th generation or 7th generation in the Bisbee area, but not always ranching. But now it's 3rd generation on the ranch.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and kids come and go.
Yeah.
And I know that far east Arizona is in the worst drought, I think, in the state, as far as I. But I know that that's still like to be said because they're looking at a really like kind of biased system. So I know it varies for sure.
Well, and Bobby can attest to this. You got one property here that just gets drowned. The property over here doesn't get dropped,
Yeah, exactly.
So-
Yep,
especially in the summertime.
that's so
This
true.
is the Arizona, the intermittent craziness
Yeah.
of.
Totally.
Monsoon season.
And we've had a
Yeah.
fairly good monsoon this year.
That's
Really?
great. Yeah, it's good to hear.
But there are areas, well, my sister-in-law's ranch, they've gotten 14 inches since June 1st.
Oh
And we've had
my
maybe
gosh.
5.
Wow, that's a lot of rain. That's great.
I live
Being
in
a hay farmer, I kind of like it being dry.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, because then you can depend on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
But we've had, this last cutting was a challenge. Every time we
Totally.
thought we were gonna bail, it rained out. So, oh, that's what you get for being a hay farmer in southeast Arizona.
Yeah, right.
Totally. Yeah. Wow. Interesting.
But I'll tell you one more thing too, and then I'll tell you guys about the grant, because I think we're actually getting close to time, aren't we?
Yeah.
Gosh, I can't believe I took 90
You're
minutes.
at like 17, 18.
Oh, yeah?
So you're,
Well, thank you, and yeah, really wonderful landowners to work with, but he did mention the Department of Defense, and it's funny I didn't mention that, so, yeah, the Department of Defense is a funder as well, especially down there around Fort Huachuca, but Central Arizona Land Trust works with the Army National Guard, you know, up north, Coconino County, Camp Navajo is up there, and same thing. They want to keep the subdivision from coming around their installation to keep their missions going, so we work, so I don't really work with Fort Huachuca, except I talk to Amber all the time, but Amber Moran is, yeah, that Fort Huachuca Central Landscape.
She's now on the, well, I told you on the NRCD.
Oh, yeah, she joined the NRCD, I love it, it's great. She's fantastic. But let me tell you about one more thing. So in my other hat with the Association of Conservation Districts, so we applied for a U.S. Department of Agriculture Climate Smart Commodities Grant. And so we applied a couple of years ago, but we finally got there with the negotiations and everything. But it's $5 million, 5-year grant. Basically what it is we were creating an Arizona-specific grant that works with our producers in our arid climate. Because Nate, what do we hear from everybody? Everybody's like, it doesn't work over there. It rains over there. It doesn't work here.
Very much, yeah.
Or sometimes there's not a lot of trust, right? So I kind of knew we had to come in and create something really special for our state, for our producers. So the Arizona Association of Conservation Districts applied, and they represent the conservation districts. So basically it's the conservation districts that are running this, but we have 12 partners. So it was all 3 universities. So DeBonker Sanyal is here, our soil health, from U of A. We've got 4 schools in ASU. I went to ASU, remember that. So it's on the ASU Sweetie Center is here. Kathleen's here, they're a great partner. So a lot of great expertise on board because we really wanted to create something that, again, works in our state. And USDA, it's all about reducing greenhouse gas emissions and sequestering carbon, right? And creating a market, because remember the commodities part of it. They wanted to create a market. Okay, what did we do? We turned it about soil health, because what are we all interested in? Soil health and water conservation. So that's really what it boils down to for us. And then we are gonna, our Local First and Pinnacle Prevention are gonna help create market for these climate smart goods, because these are like, we're gonna create consumer demand for these goods that our producers create. So there's 40 producers, and so 20 of them are gonna be what we call early adopters, and early adopters are those doing organic and or regenerative work. They don't have to be certified. Those are our early adopters, and then 20 of the 40 will be conventional. So basically what we're doing is we're paying folks that are already doing good stuff. And we're working with NRCS, they're one of our main partners on this. Working with those doing organic and or regenerative work, good soil health practices, remember that's really what it's about for us. And then paying those that want to transition to it, okay? So the application is open, well, and I'll mention one more thing. 20 of those producers, 20 of the 40, we want to be historically underserved. So that's the target. So again, paying folks to do the good stuff, paying folks that want to transition, and then we're going to incentivize the folks doing the good stuff to educate those that want to do the good stuff. So what I'd say to you is the application is open right now, and I would apply. So what we're paying, so again, it comes through NRCS, and you have to get FSA, registered with FSA and Farm Services Agency and do all that. I know Ginger's here. So you got to do all that. So they're another great partner. But what we're doing is we're paying $1,800 an acre, and it's for NRCS practices that are above and beyond their other programs. It's above EQIP and it's above CSB. They have a whole list of what they call CSAF, Community Smart Agriculture and Forestry Practices. And it's on the AACD website, which is aacd1944.com. And the application is open right now. So it's paying $1,800 an acre. We can only pay up to $16,000 a year. So really that's only 9 acres. It's a pilot project, I'll mention that. That's why we're looking for more money to keep it going, but $16,000 a year for 3 years. So basically, what is that, 48,000? Love my math skills. And so this is pilot project, but again, if y'all are doing these practices and just not getting paid, or you're doing some NRCS practices, but you want to do it on different acreage and apply for this grant, I would say apply. So aacd1944.com, and there's the application. If you click on climates or what conservation programs, and then remember it's about soil health and water, and then there's an application. So I don't know if you all want to apply or anybody else in here might.
Is it only open for farmers or ranchers?
Oh,
as
good
well?
question. Thank you for asking. It's farmers and ranchers, both of them. So, in fact, I've already 3 of the applications we've received already are from ranchers, because yeah, we wanted to cover both of them. But what was your follow-up?
So, do you have a flyer to share? Because I work for Extension and I work with underrepresented groups all over the state, so I could advertise that.
Can you send me an email?
Yeah.
And then that'd be great, because I want, so yeah, the next month we're going to be deciding all the participants in this grant project, but we want y'all to apply, like anybody and everybody. We want, if this works for you all, because again, we want to create something to help and reward our folks for doing good stuff, or help them transition to doing better soil health practices.
So say you've already got, like, through FSA, the Grassland Reserves Program, does that knock you out?
Are you sure it's called GRP?
Well, that's the name I knew of my.
Oh.
Well, they actually, they had a meeting at the Farm Bureau deal I went to.
Oh, is it the CRP?
Well, she called it Grassland Reserve.
Really?
Yeah, through FSA, and it was kind of new, well, old but new. She was
Really?
pushing, we got money. So I know Jackie applied for all that.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
So
so
talk
if
to
you're
her.
already getting federal funds, NRCS, FSA on this acreage, you cannot do it.
Right.
We can't.
So you can't double dip.
We can't double dip.
No.
That's it. We can't double dip. We would like to double dip, but we can't. But yeah, if you want to do that on different acreage, we can help you do that.
I'll tell her to talk to me.
But yeah, so farmers and ranchers. So this is pilot project, and so we're just trying to figure out with ranchers, we were gonna try to figure out what's going on, but NRCS does have a whole list of things. Anyway, I don't know if,
Yeah.
yeah,
I work at a farm currently. Does that apply for nonprofit farms as well?
I don't see why not.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
definitely a
there's
weird
nothing-
situation we're in. Like, it's very atypical in my organization, but we are growing and expanding the farm currently.
It's
right
not
now.
the Sam Savor, you know.
No, it's not. It's a native sea search. Yeah.
Oh!
Yeah, so
Oh
I'm
my
the
gosh.
assistant farm manager there.
And I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Deshaun.
Ishan?
Deshaun.
Deshaun.
Yeah,
Oh gosh, you
Are they
you
still
all
in
need to
Patagonia?
apply.
No, we moved out of Patagonia. We sold the property and now we're just based in Tucson, but we're on like about 7 acres of county land. And so that may also be an issue since it is county land and it's like a lease we have.
I
But
don't
it's
think
still,
so.
yeah, I don't think it'll still
I don't think
be that
so.
bad an issue. But
Yeah.
our big goal is to expand the farm, but also to have support with grants and other things to be able to
You need to
support
apply because I talked to Mary Warner at U of
Mhm.
A and she was like, you need to connect with these folks. I've
Oh,
been
wow.
meaning to reach out to you
Yeah, I'm happy
guys.
I walked in
Uh-huh.
on this session, yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
well, now just mention one more thing, it's basically food focused right now, so when you said pecan, I was like, yeah.
Mhm.
Alfalfa and cotton, I don't think we're touching yet because we're creating this
That's
whole
food.
consumer demand.
Just
Well,
not for humans. Well, not cotton, but.
yeah, maybe I was thinking cotton, but, yeah, no, I mean, if you wanted to apply and we could make an argument, let's go, but,
Sure.
let's do it.
Mhm.
But, you all definitely need to apply.
Yeah, for sure.
Because
Okay.
I've been, because Mary was like, do you think they'd work? I was like, I don't see why not.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
And I haven't heard anything about us getting a grant with this. I think we do have an equip grant right now.
okay,
But
so just
I have
different
to
acres.
verify, yeah,
Yeah.
I have to verify for sure. And we have
Well,
some
that's
with
good, because
USDA.
that means you're registered with FSA, so.
Yeah,
Okay,
yep.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So, yeah, definitely apply, and then
Okay.
if you all want to do pecans, even if you wanna try alfalfa, or the grain, I heard the grain, what's the?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And but Santa Vera Co-op Farm would also, I think it'd be a good suggestion.
I know, I need to
Yeah.
reach out to those
Mhm.
folks too. But anyways, yeah, please apply and please send me an email and anybody you know, send them over.
Mhm.
Well, I can just send it to all of the county agents that we have in all counties and they can share with their farmers and ranchers.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, so will you email me and I'll get you all the info. I think we've got a flyer. I think Local First created it. I didn't, one of our partners did, but
Mhm.
I think we've got a flyer. But anyways, it's really exciting and we're looking for more money to keep it going. And again, remember, so for us, it's the conservation districts, which are the trusted entity, because most folks don't, they have trust issues sometimes. And then we're creating something that works in our state, in our arid climate, with our universities and all the expertise, and then creating this market, which, we hope,
Mhm.
really creates good demand for these climate smart products.